Okay, right.
G'day, folks. Chris McLean back again with yet another episode. And in the studio today, I've got Austin from HOWTOFLY, and they focus on strategic branding, culture, and ROI. Austin's primary skill set is company and brand transformation. His clients are big and small who are ailing and in search of reinvention to survive and prosper. Austin has been around the traps of this industry for a long, long time. And in his upcoming book, HOWTOFLY, Leadership Lessons from Legends, Austin has a direct message to all agency owners, which we're certainly going to probe and get deeper into today, which is never trust a multinational. He sold 2 of his agencies to multinationals, being JWT and Interpublic, and got screwed both times, as did John Singleton and others. Super interested to get into that historical perspective and sort of understand that, what those exits looked like and how he managed to get screwed by these big multinationals, and to help you guys at home avoid those failures. And the book also shares lessons learned with 20 Australian entrepreneurs, from Kerry Packer, Bob Jane, Christopher Skase, John Singleton, and others. And for our Aussie viewers, you'll certainly understand how those are big, nefarious names in our history. So, Austin, thank you so much for dropping by. I'm sure this is going to be a killer episode. Great to have you here.
Pleasure, Chris.
You've certainly got a long history in this industry. So give us the 2-minute lowdown on when did you start, how did you come to this industry, and then I definitely want to get into your experiences in selling to multinationals and sort of what happened along that way. But give us the the briefest version possible of sort of how you got started and where this all sort of unfolded for you.
I guess as a kid, I was good at drawing, topped the marks at school in art, and I always wanted to be a sign writer.
Right.
But my father put me in the bank, and I hated it. I was the 3rd generation of the banking Beggs. I quit. He told me never to come home again. This is when I was about 15. And so I then found myself out on my own. I fortunately got a job at Repco as a client. Then I discovered advertising. Sign writing was obviously not a future career for me. I enrolled in in the very first course for the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, which, stroke of luck, 127 of us started, only 7 of us graduated. That gave me, I guess, an intellectual advantage when I applied for jobs. So my next major break is I was recruited by Young and Rubicam to start the Melbourne office. And I absolutely loved it because I worked with Joe today, who hired me. He went on to run Young and Rubicam worldwide. So what better beginning could I have in advertising than to learn from one of the very best and one of the great icons of the business?
Yeah, well.
So from then on, I just created agencies, created a lot of great brands, and all of which I'm very proud.
So what era are we talking when you got started, Austin? So not to date you too much, but just to get the historical perspective.
Look, I'm to be honest, I'm 81 years of age, and I still think like a 40-year-old, and I plan to do that for another 10 or 20 years if I can.
Yeah,
but I think the message for anyone that who wants to listen, you can do anything you want to be. You can be anything you want to be. If anyone had told me when I was 20 years of age that I'd run a multi-million-dollar ad agency, travel the world, and all that, it was just a fantasy. But it's the message I preach in the book, How to Fly, is anyone can do it, as long as your values are good, you're honest, that you have a belief in yourself. Self-efficacy is the other thing, and that's the thing that has driven me all my life, and it's infectious as well.
Yeah, so you do talk in the book, you make a link between self-efficacy and performance. Take us through how do you define self-efficacy? Is that self-awareness? Is that determination? Is that diligence? Is it perspective? How do you define that, and how does that help? How's that helped you propel your careers and the careers of the people you've interviewed?
I discovered it about 10 years ago, and unfortunately I was 70 then, and thinking of retiring, and then I discovered that'd be the worst thing I could do, because when you retire, you die. Self-efficacy is about self-belief and taking risks and knowing that you can pull it off. And even if you fail, you have the ability to rebound and come back again, and I've failed a few times, as most successful entrepreneurs do. But self-efficacy is the single most important ingredient that anyone can have. And all the top people I've worked with, Skase, Packer, all those, had this great capacity to make things happen because they believed up here that they could do it. And if they can't do it, they would get help. So to me, that is the single most important thing. The second thing is if you can link that to archetypes. Now, most people think archetypes is like astrology. It's not. Archetypes is a very serious business. And I modeled myself on The Alchemist, and The Alchemist basically turns fear into courage. The Alchemist is a change agent. And that's what I've done all my life. So you can have a philosophy and a personal self-belief that guides you and underpins your thinking and your actions, your streets ahead of most other people.
Yeah, it's a major point that that capacity to transmute challenges and risk and actually take that on and have that as a positive, right? To actually almost seek out risk and seek out challenge, and if you can, and that is that path to not mastery, but even to just optimal performance. We seem to perform better and enjoy the experiences of life where we're actually are challenged. It's rare that people on their deathbed remember a day that was easy. They remember the challenging hike that they took, or as you said, the business that failed massively, but they had this massive learning from. And a lot of have you found in your career that you learned more from failures than from successes? Could you put it that way, or is it because that's often I guess something that people say is that there's more to learn from failure than from success? But have you found that that's necessarily true, or is there something to learn from both sides?
It is very true, Chris. For instance, when I first met Kerry Packer for lunch, I didn't understand the power of silence. And Kerry Packer in those days, I'm going back to 1967, when he flew me to Sydney for lunch, he hardly said a word. And I was with John Fink, who was the boss of Australian Women's Weekly. And I came home and I said to my wife, he never said a word. I don't think and I was a client then of Bowater Scott. Right. But I've subsequently learned, unfortunately too late in life, that the power of silence is, so I've been too busy thinking of the next thing to say rather than listening to what the client or my colleagues are saying. Now, that's a skill that I would urge everyone to grab hold of immediately, and Chris Voss is a book that I've been reading regularly lately. So if anyone wants to learn about negotiation and the power of silence, read Chris Voss, his book is called Never Negotiate, Never Split the Difference.
Yes.
That's one example. But the other example, if you don't take risks, you don't succeed in life. When I heard that Bob Jane, I had a job in my life with Young and Rubicam. I founded the Young and Rubicam Melbourne office. Then I heard that Bob Jane was pitching his business. And I thought to myself, I've always wanted to start my own agency. I'll give him a phone call. I'd never met him in my life. I never had a partnership or anything. So I rang Bob Jane, and to my amazement, excuse me, I got straight through to him. Excuse me. He said, yes, come and pitch my business. A week later, I worked day and night, went and found two partners, and we won his business that night. And that changed my whole life. I worked with him for 9 years. Wow. So if you don't take those kind of risks, they don't cost anything. And in the last 5-6 years, even pre-COVID, risk-taking has become something to be avoided by boards, by governments, and everything else. And I think, the successful people today, like the adolescents and others, they take risks and they accumulate considerable fortunes. The rules haven't changed.
Yeah. I think you're bang on there. That's a major insight, that being able to take risk and being willing to step into challenge and be diligent with your time, and it's a massive skill set, right? So it's a major way to win in today's market, because there are, as you say, particularly the last 2-3 years, taking risk is something that a lot of people now avoid. They want to be safe and healthy, and I guess a lot of the narrative is about shrinking, right? Shrinking down, doing less, being safe, doing your part, fitting into this box. Like doing the exact opposite is a major skill set to develop, and can be a way to win massively, right? So the old stuff still works, right? Those sound principles still work.
I think if given the fact that a lot of your viewers are agency principals or aspiring to be or whatever, I think it's worth mentioning something, getting back to your earlier question, what would I do differently, or do you learn from failures? Yeah, I should have got a mentor a lot earlier on. I'm now mentoring 3 companies at the chief executive level, and all of them are doing sensationally well, because one is a young guy who's now built a multi-million-dollar business, but he's happy to take risks, but he's also incredibly talented and able to pull it off. But maybe there are guys like me around who have retired or whatever. Mentors are something now I regret. I've never had one. I should have had one. I've had one in the last 5 years who helped me navigate the corporate world of takeovers and everything. But that's another good suggestion I can give your people who are watching this.
So would you consider those in the book? You talk about 20 entrepreneurs and big names. If you're an Aussie listening, you know the weight that a lot of those names carry. Would you have considered them mentors in a way? How you sort of mentioned, were they more happenstance? You sort of stumbled across these guys, or were there more relationships? What was the sort of the nature of those relationships with those big players?
In most cases, they start off as clients, and then you develop friendships. Then you start to contribute at a higher level to their business, because you do things that, I'm talking at senior level now, not necessarily at the marketing director level or whatever. But I think I learned so much from Christopher Skase. He paid every bill. I worked with Christopher for 6 years. We actually pulled off, a few people know this, but I helped Christopher pull off the rights for Hermes and Louis Vuitton for Australia. And that was an incredible move. And had him front up, he was always immaculately dressed, brilliantly prepared for all adversity and everything. And same with Bob Jane. I mean, Bob was the first to use telephone calling, and he trained all his franchisees in how to speak on the phone. And that was a winning. So yes, you're right. A lot of my clients I learned from them as mentors as well as clients. And that's fantastic.
Yeah. You certainly rubbed shoulders with the bigwigs, and a lot of this you do encapsulate in How to Fly in the book. Are the lessons that you've learned, is that something that you're now able to mentor in your team? This is the lessons you've learned that you extrapolate in How to Fly. Is this what you're now bringing to your work with other agency owners, with other clients of yours? Are you bringing these insights into what you do and how you mentor and how you help others?
Chris, the 3 clients that I currently have all urged me to share my skills with others, but I've been a bit reluctant to do that. I don't want to hire people anymore. I don't want to build an infrastructure and go through all of the problems I have in the past. So I'm starting a new venture with 2 other people, highly respected, high-profile people. We'll be announcing that in the new year, and it's essentially an advisory organization. It will bring with it How to Fly, and I've just recently negotiated an arrangement with a very successful UK-based company that combines physical and digital. So even at the age of 81, I still have this restless spirit to try and do things that amaze and surprise people, and more importantly, help them make more money, but be good commercial citizens at the same time, because there's an increasing importance attached to that now.
Yeah, massively. Doing the right thing, and that whole being good corporate citizenship is it's an expectation now, right? Maybe from you, I'm sure you've seen that evolve over your time as well. More and more, it's expected that corporations act in certain ways, or at least have a preface of acting in certain ways for the planet, for the good of people, for the good of the people they work with, the people they work for, their processes, all of that stuff. There's a much. Do you see that there's a much bigger eye on that at the moment?
Well, culture is the single most important factor in the market, in my view, that is. All the work that I do and work with my colleagues is I make culture number one, strategy number two. Because if you don't get the culture right, you end up falling on your face. And the culture is fairly easy to manage if you discipline yourself to make that a number one priority. It's about having the right values around behavioral issues. It's about working as teams, and I've been doing that for many years now. Bob Jane got to where he did because we threw out all the Ralph. Remember, are you probably too young to remember the Ralph magazines and the blokey things that were full in all those days?
Yeah.
We cleaned the whole place up and made women important, as I did with Goodyear Auto Care, which we started from scratch. That was focused entirely on women, and Chris Pappas, who was the Goodyear Auto Care boss at the time, he embraced that 100%. And the 100 franchisees they've got now, the origin of that came out of making it an easier experience for women to go into automotive car things. So in many respects, being a pioneer gives you a market advantage as well, if you can promote it.
Yeah,
so culture is very important.
Yeah. Great. And as you're saying, that comes back to risk, right? That was a risky move back in the time. It seems like in today's environment that seems like a staple behavior, but at the times that you're talking about, that was not the norm. So that was very, very much a risk for a big corporation to take, right? And obviously it paid off.
Talking risk, Kerry Packer started World Series cricket, and I just created SPC baked beans and spaghetti. And the big sponsors, when he decided he was going to dress them in yellow and go out to Melbourne and not the MCG, the big sponsors all pulled out. So I was able to do a deal direct with Kerry, and SPC baked beans and spaghetti sponsored World Series cricket when it was down nothing. But of course, as we all now know, it became a massive success. SPC went from number 8 brand to number 2 brand to Heinz in the space of 3 months. Wow. That's the power of taking risks, and Kerry was very, very good at doing that.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. That sort of we talked earlier about this self-efficacy, and it's the power of almost visualizing, right? And knowing what you want to achieve and having that visual representation of, okay, I've got a feeling, maybe an emotion, I've got a vision of what I want to achieve. But that's kind of nothing without, okay, now I've actually got to be ready for those opportunities when they present. So there's an action side required, right? Is that also something that these guys that you've interviewed and worked with and a lifetime in the industry, is that something that you've recognized, that just thinking about something is not enough? You've actually got to have action in place so that when these things kind of magically aligned, you're ready to take opportunity. Like with SPC, you were there ready. Had you not had action, you wouldn't have been ready to take that opportunity.
Well, I think it's about being well informed. It's about having a good network of suppliers, having a great staff on the same level as you. I couldn't have achieved what I have without great staff or partners or whatever. But I think the single most important thing here is when you recruit, which is part of your culture development, you got to be sure you make the right decisions. It's better to say no to people that you aren't confident that their ability to contribute to your business. Better to say no straight away, because it saves you pain later and it saves them a lot of pain. So I've learned very quickly in the latter part of my life, where I've got doubts about someone fitting in, I would always say no, but in a nice way. And invariably that improves your chances of success. When you've got good people, you've got to reward them, incentivize them, and make them, and they will perform for you as well. So it's, there's no easy answer. There's no silver bullet. Everyone is different. And I look at a lot of my mates who started their own agencies in the old days. Unfortunately, several of them have passed away, but I'm still good mates with a lot of the creative people. So that's part of your culture.
So amazing insights. And the agency side is something that I'd like to definitely go into. I mean, you talk about in the book, you have this direct message of never trust a multinational. So you've obviously had some not so positive experiences in sort of in exit events and buyouts. Take us through that, because that's always a really interesting place for agency owners, particularly people that are new or are considering, okay, I've got this vehicle now, I've got this thing, maybe I want to exit it. How do I exit it? Do I actually want to exit it? Can I sell it? It's a very interesting proposition. So take us through your experience with that, because it sounds like you had lots of successes, but some of it wasn't as it maybe great as what you expected.
Chris, I'll make an offer to your viewers. Now, anyone who's thinking of selling to a multinational, I will give them a free half-hour consultation and tell them all the reasons why they should rethink it. Now, when what caused that never trust a multinational, I, in those days, was invited to a function with Martin Sorrell, who then ran the biggest agency in the world, WPP. I went to that function, and that was then reported in the trade media how he was here on an acquisition trail to buy agencies. This was after I'd been burnt by J. Walter Thompson, after John Singleton had been burnt by DDB, etc. So I then wrote a message to 8 News, which was never trust a multinational. And I put on the bottom of it, if you're thinking about doing a deal with anyone now, let me know and I'll give you free advice. Now, I still remember it. Ad News went on online on the internet at around about 11 o'clock. By 1 o'clock, I'd had about 20 phone calls, of which 8 people wanted to talk to me urgently. So, to make a long story short, I disrupted 3 takeovers. I ended up with a bottle of Grange from one of them. I had several lunches, but I completely underestimated the need to which people wanted to flog their business. And almost without exception, none of those people that I spoke to, or at least the top 5 that I had several meetings with, ended up selling their business. And a couple of them had phoned me later on and years later to thank me for doing that. So I think the danger in selling, admittedly, times have changed. In the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, it was entrepreneurs' time. But in the current environment, you've got people like Sorrell now starting up his own business. You've got the bigger ad agencies now being hijacked by Google and other income sources. Social media is making inroads. So the ability for someone to sell their business and the equity is increasingly more difficult now than what it was then. But the best advice I can give anyone, including you, is never, ever lose your control of your own destiny. And when you sell to a multinational, they buy your soul, they buy your brain, they buy your bank balances, your intellectual properties and everything. And it's just not worth it, because if you're that good to get a business to where it is now to sell when someone wants to buy it, why would you want to flog it? Now, in the commercial environment, I've been involved with some very successful companies. One of them is Wellmark, who about 4 or 5 years ago sold to Quadrant for about $300 million. Yet I was on board with the owners and the board of that company when they were having difficulty making ends meet. But we put it all together and it became a marvelous company. And it's one of the things I'm very proud of, because one of the initiatives I put in was to give a percentage to the Cancer Council. Now, that simple little idea has generated nearly $5 million for the Cancer Council over the last 5 years. So it's being in control of your own destiny does give you the freedom to be independent, to have a point of view and those other things, rather than complying with the rule book of the multinational, which has their list of rules. And if you don't comply, well, you don't fit and you go.
Yeah, I had a similar experience where we at the time that I'd built up my agency around 2008, 2009, we were approached by a big digital firm out of Sydney, and they were looking to open up a Melbourne arm of their business, and they wanted us to basically rebrand and become their Melbourne arm of their business. And yeah, exactly what you're saying. It was that toss up of, okay, yes, we were going from 100% ownership to 50% ownership, but potentially 50% of something bigger, and that's the dream, right? I own a smaller percentage of something potentially bigger, and at the end of the day, we decided exactly what we said. We wanted our freedom, we wanted our control, and it was the best decision we made because we completely pivoted the agency and moved into a really interesting space that we loved, and we wouldn't have done that had we just gone and become a digital agency. We moved into emerging tech and augmented reality and did some incredible work. And that was, we followed our passion and maintained control and did it how we wanted to do it. So I totally understand what you're talking about, having that freedom and control. And that's a lot of the reason why a lot of us start agencies, right? That's why we start businesses, because we don't want to work for somebody else. So, but then there's that, as you said, that there's that weird, we work for ourselves, we have all this passion, we build it up, and then right at the end, when it's really valuable, we go back to becoming an employee for someone, right? So, yeah,
and that's wrong.
Yeah. What particularly, you sort of mentioned some reasons previously, but what really was it just the soul destroyingness of it? Was it the rigidity? Was it the fact that the multinationals had expectations that you didn't want to fulfill or weren't aligned to your soul or your vision? What was it? What was sort of the felt sense? Because this happened multiple times to you by the sounds of it. What was it about that that they just had this? And obviously you kept going back.
Well, I guess it was, in retrospect, in those days, and still, I guess, today, it's about selling out, making money, and then growing with the business. I really loved what Young and Rubicam, the most amazing agency I've ever worked for. I thought J. Walter Thompson would be the same, but the guy I did the deal with in JWT Australia, a guy called Boyd Robertson, was just a marvelous man. I could see me working with him for the next 10 years. And that was part of the deal. He gave me a 5-year guarantee. He exited 3 months after I'd signed the deal. And they sent in an Irishman who nearly destroyed J. Walter Thompson and my business at the same time. Wow. Similarly, a different thing with when I sold my second agency to Interpublic, the guy that I had who was in my book, Max Gosling, the most amazing boss. He taught me the difference between running a $10 million business and a $40 million business. I'd never run a $40 million business in my life, but he hired me to fix the Melbourne office, and I grew that from 15 million to 35 million in about 2 years. But then he got a job offer to go to the US, and he ended up running a big operation in Asia. And his number two inherited it, and he basically destroyed Lintas in Australia in 2 years. So you're not in control of your own destiny. So no, every time I get an offer, not that I've had any in the last couple of years, I say, no, I'm happy as I am. I'm just going to be me. I stand for something. If you want to change the color of your outlooks and philosophies and everything, go and join a multinational, read their rule book. And I'm not that sort of person. I suspect you're not either.
Yeah. No, and I suspect a lot of people listening aren't, because that's why we started our own thing, right? A lot of the agency owners that I've spoken to on the show and outside of the show started their own gig because they hated working for they did the big corporate agency thing, and there was something about it that didn't vibe with them, that didn't feel right, or they were the creative and they wanted to control their destiny and do their own thing and do it their way. So a lot of us come to this because of that exact reason. So yeah, but we come into it, and then there is this dream of I'll sell it, and I'll sell it for millions, and I'll retire, and I'll sit on the beach forever. But so yeah, that's not the only way to exit an agency, right? You can actually build a business, still be involved in the business, but effectively retire yourself out of that business and make as much money by sitting on the executive board or something, and you make the same. So you exit it and they go, here's 5 mil for your business. You could make that 5 million up over the next 5 to 10 years, but be semi-retired, right? So there's multiple ways to exit an agency rather than being bought out. And you made an interesting point that in your experience now, and you're sort of quite in touch with the industry still, are those big exits becoming fewer and fewer? the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s and early 2000s? Are those big buyouts rarer?
I think they're increasingly rarer because of the diversification of the ad budget from the client point of view. It goes into social media, it goes into PR increasingly. You've got your Googles and internets and LinkedIn's and Instagrams and everything. So the ability in my day, I could control everything from point of sale, television, radio. It all came in through multiple channels. You coordinated and gave your client the book back with all the recommendations in, and he would sign off. Today, you have to have a specialist digital company, probably a branding company. It's just too diversified now. What my new entity with my other two partners, I'm going back into partnerships, but we've got a very clear understanding on that. It's all about advisory, and we will be looking to recruit or outsource to some of whom we've already got working for us on existing projects to bring the best. I mean, I want to find the best digital guy, the best social media person, and we can do that now. I've done that quite frequently over the last few years on Freelancer and that sort of thing. I think the world has changed, Chris, and I think it's going to change. The ability to buy an entity, but I think what's happening, which I've observed a little bit, people are now buying the stars, the rock stars, the visible stars. They're not buying the entities. They're looking to buy the people with the track record, with the history of achievements, of solidarity, of being loyal and honest, and all those other attributes which are now top of the list in the recruitment thing.
That's very interesting. So I actually have seen that happening, particularly where like say an agency is very specialized in a niche or in an industry, and then a big player in that niche is looking for a CMO or a marketing person, rather than say purchase the entire agency. They'll headhunt the CEO, they'll headhunt the agency owner into their specific project or business. So yeah, that's very interesting. It's less about buying the business out than buying out the talent. And talent poaching's definitely something that I can see happening at the moment.
Well, you've got new players. You've got Accenture and all the big accounting companies now buying up the stars and some businesses. And you've only got to look, and I have to tread carefully here, but you've only got to look at the output of their creative work to know that something is not happening in there in a lot of the work I see. I mean, I shouldn't even mention Coal, but Coal's the Australian way and Telstra Australian way. I mean, I've got mind to pick up the phone and pitch their business. The advent of accounting companies into the advertising space, I think only a miracle can make them perform. But we'll wait and see. It could be that they get it right. I don't know.
Yeah, that's another interesting point. Do see a lot of copy and paste marketing these days, and also literally the same slogan, the same taglines with slight differences coming out from places. So, very interesting. We don't have the brilliant creative commercials that we saw in the 80s and 90s when you actually had to try, right? You had to try to be creative. There's in a lot of places, I find that we've lost touch with that genuine Aussie ingenuity and that genuine creativity in the ad space, unfortunately. Not everywhere, but yes, you're saying, and that homogenization could be a reason for that you've got people that aren't creative agencies. You've got accounting firms and crypto companies and all these sorts of players and Googles and tech companies buying up talent and running their own creative and trying to piece it together. So that could be a reason. But even in my lifetime, Austin, when I started my agency in 2002, and even over this 20 years, I've seen a massive, coming back into agency world now, particularly in the last 2 years, right? Now, back in 2002, we recruited people into our office and we hired locally and who was around. Now I can go and find the best talent in the world and hire them into my agency and have this sort of beautiful, fragmented, diverse, global agency of amazing talent and pull it all together either on a project basis. It's such a different ecosystem out there at the moment, but that is an amazing opportunity as well for people to tap into.
Look, I think the other thing that's happening is that the schools and the universities, the TAFEs and everything, the teachers that are teaching the current crop, I have to measure my words carefully here, but I do have evidence of this, is basically comprises a lot of people who were in the advertising and marketing business, client side and everything, but they failed, and they're in teaching the new crop of young people coming through. Whereas in my day, when I did my RMIT 4-year course, we had the leaders of the industry, the top psychologists coming in, and we left our sessions, and it was twice a week from 6 till 9. We're so excited we'd front up the next morning and work, and I don't see that happening. So I think universities and TAFEs and educational managers or whatever you call need to bring a touch of commercial reality in. And I've actually recently sent emails to letters to 3 universities to say, I'm happy to come in and do free of charge lectures to your graduates to give them that sense of commercial reality and make them more commercially savvy before they go out. I haven't heard back from anyone. That was only 2 weeks ago, but who knows? They're probably busy doing other things.
Yeah, that's a really interesting insight again. That the people teaching, so they say that those that do, those that can do, those that can't teach. I don't particularly. I don't know. There's always necessarily a truism, but maybe if you're seeing that the people that are training and teaching this generation may not be or at least have that commercial purview of commercial success, where they, like yourself, you stepped in and grew a valuation by $20-odd million. That's not a mean feat. You've got reality proof. You've got proof in reality of an outcome. Maybe teachers these days, or some teachers these days don't have that commercial skill set. So yeah, super interesting world that we're in at the moment and moving into.
I think on that point, Chris, the only message I would give that will fit the mindset of agency principals moving into this new era is they've got to forget about winning awards and all the beautiful stuff that goes on in design and website. They should be focused on helping their client make more money to increase their return on investment. I've always done that and amazingly successful. So when the agency goes into pitch, are they going to win the business on the basis of awards and everything? Not these days. You've got a new genre of CEOs and everything now who've been burnt by ad agencies, PR companies and everything. So if they can go in and say, look, this is my strategy for you to improve your margins, lift your margins, risk this and get a higher return on your investment. That's where the future is. And if anyone can do that, they will be abundantly rich, as long as they don't sell out to a multinational.
Nice caveat. They're commercially minded. Funny that when you focus on making your customers more money, you end up making more money yourself.
Of course you do. Yes. That's how it works.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm sure we could chat for the next hour or so. Won't have to.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. If people do want to find out more about you, get connected, get some mentorship, have a chat to you, where are some of the best places for them to do that?
Look, they can go. If they want, my email is Austin at howtofly.com.au. If they want to send me an email I will send them a PDF of the book free of charge, on the basis that they don't sell out to a multinational if it makes them more successful. But I'm happy to help anyone if they want some advice or whatever. And I look forward to hopefully hearing from someone who got some value out of today. And I'm sure you would pass that on to me as well.
I sure will. It's been so much value for someone that's been there, done that multiple times. And I'll make sure I'll drop all those links in here, and anyone that wants to flick Austin an email and get a free copy of his book. It's also available on Amazon and Kindle, so you can go and buy a copy and learn lessons from some of the biggest and best leaders in Australia. And obviously, Austin's long history in this industry, on the coalface, actually doing this stuff, wins, losses, all the best experiences. Austin, thank you so much for dropping by. We'll have to do this again sometime and
thank you.
Tap into your wealth of knowledge. Look forward to chatting again soon. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.